This is Denise Evans with Butler Evans Education, and today I'm going to answer some questions people commonly have about taking possession of tax sale properties in Alabama. And the first question they ask is, when can I take possession of my tax sale properties? I can answer that question fairly quickly, but it causes a couple of other questions, so bear with me throughout this short video. The statute that's relevant here is Alabama Code Section 40-10-74. The title is Right of Purchaser or Assignee to Possession, Redemption when Lien is Recorded. And the relevant part of that statute says, any purchaser of lands at a tax sale other than the state or anyone claiming under him shall be entitled to possession of said lands immediately upon receipt of certificate of sale from the tax collector. And if possession is not surrendered within 6 months after demand therefore is made by said purchaser or his assignee, the said purchaser or his assignee may maintain an action in ejectment or a statutory real action in the nature of ejectment or other proper remedy for the recovery of the possession of the lands purchased at such sales, and shall be entitled to hold the possession thereof on recovery, subject, however, to all rights of redemption provided for in this title. So what does all of that mean? Well, all of that relates to the first part of the title, right of purchaser or assignee to possession. I have left out the language having to do redemption when lien is recorded. That has to do with tax sale property that has recorded mortgages or IRS liens or judgment liens, any sorts of liens, and that's not really relevant to this particular video. The short answer is you are entitled to possession of your tax sale property as soon as you get your tax certificate, and that usually happens 8 to 15 days after the tax auction. There is a 5-day period after the tax auction that is the protest period for the owner of the property to say, no, this was all a mistake, undo it, undo the tax sale related to my property. As a practical matter, what that works out to is a 5-day grace period during which any taxpayer can go in and pay their taxes and unwind the tax sale. No 12% redemption interest, no liability for preservation improvements, nothing. So the counties will wait the 5 days, and then they'll issue the tax certificates, and if you are the investor, the successful purchaser, you will get yours 8 to 15 days after the tax auction on average. As soon as you have that certificate in your hands, and not 1 minute before then, you are entitled to take possession of the property. You're entitled to enter on the property. Now, a lot of times you will attend a tax auction where the revenue commissioner or the tax collector or the probate judge, whoever does the introductory remarks, will tell you that you cannot set foot on the property until you have the tax deed. Or they will say, you can take possession if you want to, but you're probably going to end up in court and get arrested. And all of that is wrong. I think to be charitable, they are worried about the situation where somebody buys a tax sale property, gets the tax certificate, goes out there, and somebody's living there, and they throw that person's stuff out on the street. Yes, you are going to get in a lot of trouble if you do that. But the easy thing is for them to say, don't do anything. But they aren't telling you accurate advice. The advice I'm giving you in the statute is the right answer. You are entitled to possession as soon as you get your certificate. Now, as I said, you cannot toss people out on the street. If they are already there, you're going to have to get them out somehow. You're going to have to show them the certificate and the statute, perhaps, and talk them out. Well, that's never an easy thing. So what can you do? We'll get into that in a few minutes. You can take over vacant property. You can immediately go into possession of vacant property, and maybe that's raw land out in the country. Maybe it's a subdivision lot that was never built on. Maybe there's a house or a commercial structure, some sort of structure on there, but it's been abandoned. Any number of things, but as long as there is obviously nobody in possession of that property, you can go in and take it over. Now, you can't rush in there the minute the family goes out to the grocery store and change all the locks and not let them back in. That's the same as throwing all their stuff out on the street. But you can do these other things. And as we'll discuss a little bit later in this video, it's extremely important for you to take possession. It's not just that you are entitled to possession. You need to take possession as quickly as you can. So how do you take possession? One way is to put up no trespassing signs and put your phone number on them. Because if somebody has an issue with that tax sale and thinks that it was wrongful or it was void or if they want to redeem, you need to make it easy for them to find you, especially if there was a problem with the tax sale. If that's the issue, you need to find out about it earlier rather than later. So put up no trespassing signs with your phone number. Put up for rent signs or for sale signs. You don't have to rent it. If it's a dilapidated house that in its current condition wouldn't rent for more than $400 a month, put up a for rent sign for $1,000 a month. Put up a for sale sign and tell people you want 10 times what the property's worth so people don't bug you. But putting up for rent or for sale signs are indications that you are letting the world know that you are entitled to possession, and that is you taking possession of the property even though you are not physically there. You can change the locks. You can board up the windows. You can start performing preservation improvements as soon as possible, and we'll get to that rule in just a couple of minutes. The photograph here is a survey stake with some flagging on it. Fencing property is a good way to establish possession because you fence it in and you say what's inside the fencing is mine and you're not allowed to come in here. But fencing is expensive. You can do something different and just pound some survey stakes into the ground, sort of along the road frontage and a little way down the side boundaries, and put some flagging on it. So you're giving the visual indication of a fence without having to go to the expense of a fence. And that's taking possession also. Talk to the neighbors. Let the neighbors know that you bought the property at a tax sale and that it's yours and you're going to be doing something with it. And then keep a journal. Every time you visit the property, every time you chat with the neighbors, every time you check on it, put that in a journal that is dedicated to just that property, so that if an issue ever comes up, all you have to do is pull your journal out and say, this is what I did to take possession of the property. And again, I'll get into this a little bit later in this video, but possession is incredibly important in the tax sale field, so pay particular attention to what I just told you about how you take possession. If the current occupant is still in the property, if the owner is still in the property, if the owner has rented it out and the owner's tenant is in the property, if a squatter is on the property, owner died and somebody just moved in, and you can't talk them off the property, you are going to have to file an ejectment lawsuit against them. An ejectment lawsuit is a lawsuit that is filed in circuit court. That's the regular trial court where people have jury trials. In order to start the process, you have to give the occupant of the property written notice to vacate the property. And if the occupant is like a tenant of the owner, you have to give the owner notice also, the person who didn't pay their taxes. So you have to give them written notice, and then you are not allowed to do anything for 6 months. 6 months after you have given the written notice, you can then file your ejectment lawsuit in circuit court. At that point, the owner can tell the court that he wants to redeem the property and ask the court to calculate how much it is to redeem. So you will get the redemption charges, the taxes, and the 12% interest. But the owner will also have to pay your legal fees. So at least you'll get your legal fees back as part of the price tag of redemption. Okay, I mentioned preservation improvements a little bit earlier, and this is the code section, Alabama Code Section 40-10-122, and it's subsection C. And this has to do with what is the price tag when the owner redeems? How much does it cost to redeem? And in addition to having to pay you all the taxes that you've paid, plus 12% per year interest on those taxes, this is the relevant section about additional charges. It says, with respect to property which contains a residential structure. That part is critically important. So if it's commercial property, this rule does not apply. With respect to property which contains a residential structure at the time of the sale, regardless of its location, the proposed redemptioner must pay to the purchaser or his or her transferee, in addition to any other requirements set forth in this section, the amounts set forth below. One is all insurance premiums, and that's casualty insurance. All insurance premiums paid or owed by the purchaser for casualty loss coverage on the residential structure with interest on the payments at 12% per annum. So if you put insurance on it and it contains a residential structure, you will get reimbursed for that insurance plus 12%. Subpart 2 is the value of all preservation improvements made on the property determined in accordance with this section with interest on the value at 12% per annum. And the two most important words in that section are value. It's not the cost. It's not the total of how much money you spent. It's how much did you increase the value of the property because of your preservation improvements. And as we all well know, you can spend maybe $5,000 fixing a property up, but increase the value maybe $25,000 or $30,000. And so the number that they will have to pay you as part of the redemption is the $25,000 to $30,000, not the $5,000 you actually spent. But the only requirement is they have to be preservation improvements. You can't build on a new garage. You can't build a house on a vacant lot. And there's no real guidance in the code. There's a definition of what a preservation improvement is, but no real guidance. I go into this in more detail in my book and my classes. It just takes too much time right here for this short video to go into it. So you're entitled to make those preservation improvements. If it's a property that you want to fix up so you can rent it out, then you're entitled to take possession of the property, go on it, and make those preservation improvements. Which leads into the next question, can I rent the property out? Yes. If you are entitled to possession, then you are entitled to rent the property out and keep the rents even if the owner redeems. All the rents that you collect up until the date of redemption is your money that you get to keep, which is why so many people invest in tax sale properties knowing that very often the owner is going to redeem, but they're okay with that because they're going to get all that rental income in the meantime. Well, what happens if the owner redeems? When the owner redeems, you are no longer entitled to possession as of the date of redemption. You must surrender possession to the owner. If you have a tenant in the property, the tenant has to move out. And so that means any lease that you have on tax sale property has to include a 30-day cancellation clause so you can cancel the lease if the owner redeems. Although there is no statute on this subject and no Supreme Court guidance, most experts think that you probably have 30 days to surrender possession if you're a tenant or occupying the property at the time of the redemption. No court is going to make you kick a tenant out on the exact same day that redemption occurs. That's just not reasonable, but 30 days is a reasonable time to vacate. Okay, this is the crux of the matter. Now that you know about possession, now that you know all the things you can do to take possession and the improvements you can make and the tenant you can put in place and the rent that you can keep, why you should take possession, why I'm recommending that you take possession as quickly as possible. And the reason is it shortens the redemption time periods. This subject is way too lengthy and complicated for this video, but please take my word for it. It is critically important that you take possession as soon as you can, because you might have a tax deed. You might get a tax deed 3 years after the tax sale happened and get your tax deed and think that there are no redemption rights out there, and there could be redemption rights for years into the future depending on when you took possession of the property. Possession cures a void tax sale. If there was a problem with the tax sale, you will not get interest. When the owner redeems, they call it a redemption even though it's a void tax sale, they will not have to pay you interest on the taxes. You're not entitled to keep all the rents that you collected. There's all sorts of problems with a void tax sale, but possession can cure that so that the owner, even if everybody agrees that the tax sale was void, the owner cannot complain about it. It's your property. And then possession increases profits through collection of rents and or getting the value of your preservation improvements as part of the redemption price tag. Or in the alternative, if ultimate ownership of the property is what you want, doing those preservation improvements often makes it too expensive for the former owner to redeem, so you end up with the property. Well, thank you for watching. I hope this answered your questions about possession. There is a lot of wrong information out there. I have given you the statute, I've given you the explanation, and whatever else you hear about this subject, I'm right, and those other people that you hear are wrong. And if you think somebody else might be right when they say, no, don't set foot on the property until you have your tax deed, show them a copy of the statute and say, I don't understand. The statute says I'm entitled to possession. And I will tell you, there's just over 150 years of Alabama Supreme Court decisions that say time and time again, of course you're entitled to possession. So there's no question about this, except among people who maybe don't know the law as well as they might. There's a lot of law to know, and you can't know all of it. I hope you learned something useful from this. Please go online and leave a good review, and then check out my live classes, live webinars, recorded videos, and books under the Distressed Properties tab. Thank you. Appreciate you attending.